Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money with your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 578 of Screw the Commute podcast. I'm here with Magic Mike. This guy is one of the world's most experienced podcast engineers. His actual name is Kay Barot, and he's the chief engineer at the podcast agency Pickle and Company, Pickle and Co. And that's, I believe, out of Singapore. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. So we'll have him on in a minute. We'll talk about podcasting and all the great things that come of it, and a little bit of technical stuff, so you know what to buy and what not to buy and all that stuff. All right, hope you didn't miss episode 577. Michael DeLon was here. He's a credibility building expert and uses a book as the start of that, but he's got lots of methods so that you increase your credibility, which helps increase your fees and your sales and all that. So that was episode 577. Anytime you want to get to a back episode, you go to screwthecommute.com/ and then the episode number. That was 577. Now, pick up a copy of our automation ebook. We actually estimated it about 2 years ago and found that just one of the tips in this book has saved me 7.5 million keystrokes. And we're not exaggerating, probably 8 million by now. And I want you taking your time with customers and prospects and not fighting with your computer. So there's all kinds of cheap and free automation techniques right in front of your face. If somebody just showed you how to use them, well, that's what this book will do, show you how to use them. So pick up your free copy, which we sell it for $27, but it's yours free for listening to the show at screwthecommute.com/automate free, screwthecommute.com/automate free. Now, we've got this great program going on for persons with disabilities to get them scholarships in internet and digital marketing. And we'd love to have your help. It's something you can really be proud of to be involved in. So check out the campaign we have going at imtcva.org. That'll be in the show notes. That's my school website, imtcva.org/disabilities. And you can see the GoFundMe campaign we have there, and you can see video updates from the people in the program. It's just so inspiring to see them. Two of the people are blind, and they're doing internet marketing stuff, and they're shooting better videos than I do. Right, so check that out. And then, hey, while you're over getting your copy of your ebook, pick up a copy of our podcast app at screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. And you can put us on your cell phone and tablet and take us with you on the road. All right, let's get to the main event. Magic Mike has produced 1,500 plus podcast episodes across different time zones and countries. He's interviewed massively big CEOs from airlines and big companies, and even Facebook has had him work for him, and the National University of Singapore, and just all over the place. 1,500 plus. That's really awesome. And he hosts the Magic Mike podcast, where he speaks to podcasters globally about the trends in the podcast industry. And we're so thrilled to have him on from Singapore today. Magic Mike, are you ready to screw the commute?
Let's go, Tom. Let's go, Tom.
How you doing there? I know it's early in the morning over there, so I thank you for getting up to be on the podcast. But boy, 1,500 plus episodes. How long you been doing this?
I've been doing this for about 3 to 4 years.
That's
actually.
all. Wow,
Yeah.
you must do this. How many a day is that? Gee whiz.
It's like 1,500 episodes, shows. It's all combined. It's crazy.
I'll bet. Now, are you doing it all remotely, or do you go on location, or what?
When we started off with a studio. So we had a mini studio in this place called Bukit Timah. It's a small place in Singapore. We actually did most of our recordings there. Then what happened was, before the pandemic hit, we decided, hey, let's just work from home. Let's not do the studio. So what I did was we built up like a road studio, we call it. So we have the Rode Podcaster Pro.
So you're talking Rode, RODE, right?
There's a catch in the name. It's actually like a Rode studio.
Oh,
but then it's filled with Rode equipment.
okay.
You know. So we got a Audio Technica BPHS1. Those are the headsets, and those are like the go-to studio. It's like we'll bring the studio anywhere to you because it made more sense. You see.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how we started. Then it went to the Rode studio, and here we are.
Well, I hear that you've done them like 30,000 feet in the air too.
Yeah.
Tell them about that. How did that come about?
So we were doing a gig where we were going across countries and recording some artists, recording some of the talents for a podcast show. And while commuting, me and my colleague were thinking, screw it, why not just record a podcast while we're on air? So I had the Zoom H6 with me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of Audio Technica BPHS ones.
Okay, let's tell everybody, because they're not real conversant in this. When he says a Zoom H6, he's not talking about Zoom, the online thing that we do. A Zoom is another company that makes digital recorders. So H6 is one of the models.
The OG Zoom I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's like a audio recorder that you use to record like your nature sounds. A lot of nature sounds is recorded via that. Podcasters, it's a very popular podcasters mixers, that mini equipment that you use to connect your mics. It's a fantastic piece of equipment. So, and it doesn't require any power. If you've came across one, you just got to use batteries and memory card. It's good.
It does eat some batteries. I will now. I have an H4 and an H5, and the H4 eats some batteries pretty quick. So you can get the AC adapter for them too. So
you can connect them to your laptops to power it up with a USB. That's perfect. That perfectly works. So yeah, what we did was brought it up in the air. It's like, let's just record there. So hooked it up. Started recording a couple of pieces. I still remember the look the lady gave beside me. She was pretty annoyed because she was having a good sleep, and then there were these two guys talking about their experiences, and she looked pretty unhappy.
Well, did you edit it when you got down and have to do a lot of noise reduction or what?
Not a lot of noise reduction. We kept the noise at the background because it was authentic,
right?
And I fortunately wasn't sitting near the engine. And luckily, the BPHS ones, they are pretty good dynamic microphones, so they don't really pick up a lot of the background noise. And it worked to a certain extent. It worked, and it was actually quite an awesome piece, actually.
Yeah, so that's really great, even though they won't let you back on that airline anymore.
It was 2 years.
Were you wearing your mask when you did it?
No, this was actually pre-COVID days.
Before the COVID days.
Pre-COVID. Yeah.
Now you've been into this a long time. I'm wondering how powerful do you think it is for when people are listening to podcasts that interest them to move them to action and motivate them and so forth? So
podcasts are actually are easier to listen and easier to consume. So at least in Singapore context, it's easier to listen into an audio than watch a video or something like that. So I'm a mega fan of actually audio podcasts. And I have seen use cases where people have listened to a show and like, hey, thanks for recommending me that show, or reached out to the host, thanks for actually producing this kind of episode. You've taught me something. I have experienced that with other shows. Even with Magic Mike to a certain extent, people actually reached out to me and say, thanks for teaching me about this. Didn't know this existed. An example is actually one of my guests edits his podcast while actually taking his dog for a walk. So he actually edits it while he's walking, and when he hears like a pause or he wants to edit that, he stops, just takes out his stylus and just cuts it and yeah, he's done.
That's
So that's that.
amazing.
Yeah. So there are a lot of learning points in podcasts, and it helps you multitask because I'm a multitasker. Usually when I am doing stuff in the background, I have a podcast running in the background. It's in a way, it doesn't keep you lonely as well. Actually,
I'm just I'm just thinking walking the dog and editing is probably okay, but if you were on a date with a woman or something, it's probably not the best best thing to
I'm more likely to do that. Given how I'm audio nerd, I should say.
So we know that, and we will talk about equipment some, but let's give that as a given. You should have good quality equipment and a little bit of technical knowledge, but a lot of people don't plan very well for their podcasts. And
Mm.
why do you think like content and marketing and things like that are important when they plan it?
So producing a podcast is easy. It's become easier right now,
Mm-hmm.
especially after the pandemic. Access to equipment are easy, but the key trick here that people need to learn is how are you going to sort of create that storyboard, create that architecture that your fans are going to understand, that your listeners are going to get hooked onto, and how are they going to relate their experiences to you, to your show. That's what people need to sort of unlock, if that makes sense. They need to sort of like relate that. They need to keep in mind that they're talking to somebody else rather than talking to themselves. That's what matters the most. So actually, having that content plan, that matters more. Of course, having good equipment also plays a huge part in this, in my opinion. Then comes the marketing. You can say like you can do like snippets and all that, but how are you going to create that stickiness? How are you going to keep fans coming back? Seeing your audio, seeing your stuff. That's what they sort of need to crack because that's the only uncrackable part right now in the podcasting industry. Or I won't say uncrackable. People have cracked it, but there are more podcasters who are producing podcasts than the famous one. If that makes sense. Like you hear about Joe Rogan's, you hear about celebrity podcasts, but you don't hear about that low lying fruits who have actually produced good shows, but they don't get that reach in that sense. The key to that would be actually producing it consistently. If you're
Mm-hmm.
producing it on a Sunday at a 10 a.m., keep pushing it out on Sunday at 10 a.m. Because there you have a consistency and people know, okay, this person is going to release it then. I'm waiting for the show. And it's not going to come in like 6, 7 episodes. It's going to take time. It's going to take time for you to build that audience. It's going to take time for you to hustle and, gather that community. It always will take time. So consistency is the answer for that.
So what other thing? And that's very important: consistency, persistency. But what other things have you seen that have worked well for podcasters to market their podcast?
One probably important thing I've came across recently is actually going on like Facebook, Reddit, just
Mm-hmm.
talking about your just being authentic there.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about your podcast, saying, hey, check out this show if you're interested. Especially those with huge group numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Those tend to work. This I found out actually last month, to be honest. It's quite interesting how they tend to move in that sense. Reddit is actually quite an interesting space. And moreover, like TikTok. I'm not sure if you're on TikTok, Tom, but
If I get on TikTok, I'm there for 2 hours before I know what hit me.
TikTok surprisingly is actually doing well for certain podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Those that's quite explicit or they're quite open in that sense. I see podcasters producing on TikTok and I feel like they get good numbers in that sense. So that's an interesting space I'm looking out on.
Yeah, and you got to be careful on Reddit because if you push too hard,
Exactly.
Reddit's people will come after you.
No, I
they,
mean
they don't
there are
hold back.
there are channels specifically for podcasting. I mean, it's where you talk about. It's not going in and hardcore promoting your podcast. It's more of like, hey, check out my show, or it's engaging and communicating with that community.
Hmm.
So it's like aligning your message with that community. That works.
Now, you got to have a good microphone. I mean, people try to do this with those darn iPhone earbuds with the
AirPods.
microphone hanging on their shoulder and bouncing around. so talk a little bit about the quality equipment people should have to do podcasting.
I mean, microphones, at least in Singapore right now, are within a decent microphone is within $100, and that's actually pretty good. Even the Blue Yeti, to a certain extent, it's not the best in my opinion, but it's a decent mic. It's actually like $180, the cheapest you can find here, and this is actually a very important thing. And why I say this is better than AirPod is because when you're doing a podcast, especially an audio form podcast, your audio is what connects you to your audience. It's what delivers your message, your content to the audience. So imagine having like a hollow audio or audio coming out from a bathroom. I'm just gonna switch it off. People forgive a bad video, but they'll never forgive a bad audio.
Exactly.
So I would rather the host invest at least a bit in a proper microphone. I mean, if you're starting out, a $50 microphone is good enough. Even if you decide not to continue your podcast for whatever reasons, maybe you can still use it for your calls. You can still use it for any other stuff you can do online, and I think that's a pretty good investment. It's good to have one. It's a decent quality. Start off somewhere. So, to me, if you're starting out a podcast, look into buying one. $50 one is good. Is good enough. Better than the AirPods. Better than the Polycoms. Better than using your desktop audio is way better in my opinion.
Do you know the ATR 2100?
Yeah, that's 2100X is what
The newest one. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
2100. Yeah, so one of my students got one for $62 on sale on Amazon, and it's just excellent. And it's nice thing about it, I think it's USB and XLR.
And XLR. Exactly. I have the Samsung Q2U as a backup, and it works like a gem.
Yeah.
It's decent enough. It's good enough. It does the job.
Yeah. Now when you I didn't catch everything you said about the Zoom when you were on the airplane. Were you using the internal mics in the Zoom, or are you plugging in?
So with that microphone setup, you need like a proper dynamic microphone so that it cancels the noise to a certain extent. What we were using is this microphone called Audio Technica BPHS1 that comes with the Rode Studio. So I mean that was built in with we built it with the Rode Studio. We mixed and matched. That is like you know that broadcaster microphones you see on TV.
Yeah.
So basically that is one of those kinds where you have a headset and it comes up with a boom arm microphone, and it sort of does a very decent job in my opinion.
So you were sharing it with the other person, or
No,
you
we
each had one?
we each had one actually.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have like a few of those. It's a XLR with a 3.5 mm output for audio.
Can you tell them a little bit about the difference between condenser microphones and dynamic?
So dynamic microphone is basically microphone that picks up audio within a bubble. So imagine like I believe you're using the Shure SM7B right now, Tom.
Yeah.
So all these microphones that we are using right now, it picks up audio within a bubble. So I'm just going to show an example. So right now I'm actually away from my mic, and you can hear the audible difference. That
Yeah.
I'm a bit softer. I'm a bit coming out a bit softer, and now I'm really close to my mic. You can hear the difference on audio quality, right? Now this is a dynamic microphone with a condenser mic. It's more or less it picks up almost everything. There isn't like a bubble. There isn't say they I mean, the closer you get, the better you sound, but it's more uh it picks up basically everything from a wide range. So I have a fan running in the background with a condenser mic. That would be pretty audible. It's still audible now, but it's not as audible if you're using a condenser
Yeah, I
mic.
can't hear it, and
A, a,
I got good
a good
headphones on.
a good condenser mic would be the Rode anti-USB, in my opinion. Anti-USB and 80-2020, the Audio Technica 2020.
Yeah,
Those are
I used
pretty.
to have that one, but the darn thing was it was just too sensitive for home
Yes.
studio. That was the problem. I was editing extra hours to try to get breaths out and any little noise out, even with noise gates. And
So with the condenser mic, you need to have that pop shield, the
mhm.
pop filters, all that kind of stuff. With a dynamic mic, not you still need them, but not as important in my opinion, because it's all about mic positioning.
All right,
That
so I'm
also
going to do
plays a
some
huge.
tests here since I got the superstar on the line here. So I'm about 9 inches from the microphone right now.
You're right.
So if now I'm 4 inches. Which do you think is better?
4.
Oh boy, I gotta move this over now.
I mean, with the Shure SM7B, it's a very minute difference, but you gotta have a ear for it. The closer you are to the Shure, in my opinion, the better it sounds.
All right, so here I'm at 3 to 4 inches. I even hear it in the headphones. It's like more depth to the whole thing.
There's a bit more bass to it,
Mhm.
that it brings out the full range of the Shure SM7Bs.
You know what though, Magic Mike? It doesn't make me look any better, other than it covers my
see,
face more if I'm closer to.
see, that's what podcast does. It doesn't give you a face. I mean, there's good and bad to it, but it gives you a very good audio. It gives you a very sexy audio.
Yeah, there we go. So now I've edited every single one of your episode 578. So I've
Mhm.
edited them myself with Adobe Audition. But what do you recommend for beginners? Now I've actually been on podcasts and I ask them. I say, hey, what do you edit with? And they say, well, I don't even edit it.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, do you think that's a bad idea if you want to compete at the highest levels?
No, I mean, if you want to edit, it's good to have a bit of groundwork done to know how it's edited, what are the elements involved. Of course, if you're not editing it, you're outsourcing it. You save a bit of time. You focus on the content planning, because I'm sure editing takes up a lot of time, right?
And it takes less time now that I got a dynamic mic, because before I
Yeah.
was having so many audible breaths that was killing me and any other noises. So now it takes less time, but I kind of enjoy
Yeah.
it. It's fun to do, and but it does take time, but it isn't that hard. I mean,
I
if
mean,
with a little
when
bit of
I
training.
when I interviewed some guests on Magic Mike, they were their thought process was like, I want to save time on editing so I can focus more on the content, on the marketing. So it's a trade off to them, some of them. But one tool I would recommend for beginners would be actually Audacity. That's a free tool.
Yeah.
You can use it for your Windows. You can use it for your Mac, Linux, if I'm not wrong, as well. So it's pretty robust. It's almost quite similar to Adobe Audition, but it doesn't have the plugins and all that.
Yeah, tell them
And
about plugins. Like I actually got a deep breath plugin from Waves,
mm-mm.
and it never worked. Because the breaths were different all the time. So it never.
I don't usually use the plugins, because there are a lot of variables in a podcast, especially ever since we transitioned into online setting. There are more variables, so I don't really use plugins that much. I use more of my hear and feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I use someone recommended to me NS1 noise reduction, and it
Mm-mm.
works way better than the internal noise reduction that Adobe has. and it's very simple, and it was very cheap, and
Mm-mm-mm.
so I use that, and I primarily use that for my audio books, where the quality really has
Right.
to, you have to meet the requirements of Audible and ACX. I don't know if you're familiar with those companies,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, they have very exacting requirements, and it took me a while to learn how to get the RMS values right, and then you change one thing and something else would change, and you had
Mm-mm.
to normalize to 3 dB, and there's all kinds of stuff you had to do. But once I learned it, man, the audio was great, and it got accepted right away. So that was good.
Like that takes time, but Audacity works well if you're a beginner, in my opinion. Without any plugins or anything.
Yeah,
Just normalize, compress, and I usually do a hard limit just to make sure everything is smooth.
explain
And
to
it
explain to them normalization, what that means.
so normalization is sort of like it brings the audio slightly louder. It sort of like makes the audio more loud, if that makes sense. It sort of like levels the audio. Compressor, on the other hand, it sort of like brings the small peaks into louder. It sort of like matches the louder peaks and the smaller peaks in that sense, so that it doesn't sound in balance. Because sometimes when you're talking like this, it suddenly go low, and then suddenly you start coming up high. So it's just to match that imbalance. Doing a compressor on that, it helps.
Yeah, and the compressor, I learned a long time ago that it makes your audio easier to listen to on
Yes.
earbuds and on airplanes and cars and everything, rather than because if they can't hear part of it, like you said earlier, they're going to leave. They're going to
Yeah.
turn it off.
And like normalizing it and compressing it, it's sort of like it does the job. It really does enough.
How many recordings do you think you'll do before you retire?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm slowly stepping away. Not per se recording, but I am focusing more on like how to get better data for the podcast, more on the
Mm-hmm.
marketing side. So that's something I'm trying to focus on, and the performance sides of podcasts, because there is a real demand there as to, like I was mentioning earlier, it's slightly uncrackable. How do you get proper data? How do you use that data to actually make better decisions for your podcast? So that's what I'm trying to sort of figure out and trying to get my knee deep in.
And how are you doing that? Uh, like for instance, we use Libsyn
Mm-hmm.
as the podcast host, and that's probably one thing we should talk about to people. Like they figure, well, I'll just put this on my website. No, you don't.
Right, right.
No, you
Yeah,
don't.
no, you don't. No, you don't. So
Tell
I
them.
use Transistor to actually play around. Because I feel Transistor's data is pretty robust.
Hmm.
They have a bit.
What do you look for in data besides just
So
downloads?
how the episode is doing from day one, that is something I look at. Where is it popular? What kind of platforms are people listening into? What
Hmm.
devices people used to listen into? So all these small things matter to me. So I'm actually looking at it. I'm still in the learning stage, I should say. So it's still interesting how data impacts the listeners. How it impact. It sort of gives you a avatar. It gives you a picture that, okay, this is what I need to do in order to get this. So it's just a lot of experiments for now, I should say.
Now, when you built the studio at home, how much effort did you put into sound? The walls and the floors and the ceilings and so forth to get the best sound you could out of your house.
So fortunately, walls and like stuff, I didn't spend much because I have a very packed room, if I should
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like things to break up my audio. The what matters is you should have a lot of things like shelves, plants, a TV, maybe a bed, even a fan, for example. all this equipment, all this stuff, it should be there to break up the audio so that the audio wave doesn't bounce back and creates that echo that you hear that you hear in a glass room. You see, so that's something that helps. In terms of mixer, I have a Rodecaster Pro on my own, so I bought that. That was about 800 at that time SGD, and I have a Rode Pod mic which I'm using right now. So that's about 150 SGD. It did cost me about about 1K with the miscellaneous like equipment and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it's been very informative. Thanks so much for coming on. How would somebody reach you?
You can look up on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, just K Barrett from Pickle, and happy to respond to any kind of questions, messages.
Let's spell that for them.
So that's K space BHARATH.
BHARATH. RATH, but you don't pronounce the H like I thought it was Barath, but you say it's Barut.
It's Barrett.
Barrett. Okay.
Barrett. Yeah.
All right, we'll get that in the show notes.
It's a tough pronunciation.
And that's LinkedIn, you mean?
Yep.
Beautiful. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you getting up for us.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be on your show.
Okie doke. We'll catch y'all in the next episode. See you later.